Hi everyone. On today's video, we are going to go over where we left off last time, which was where we had done some database things, which were to initialize this FLP database. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at why. So we have this application user here, right? We added this as an entity. We added it to the application DB context, generic repository, unit of work. So we were referencing this application user, but we're not actually seeing that as a table. Let's get a table in here for application user. And what you're going to notice though is that ASP.NET Core identity is going to application user inherits from identity user, and you're going to see a lot of tables be created because we're using an identity user from ASP.NET Core. So let's get started with creating a migration. So in your default project, we're going to point at flp.data. So we want it to look here and look at what we are changing so that Entity Framework Core can automatically produce us a migration. So we're going to add a new folder and we're going to just call it migrations. So I'm not sure if that automatically does that, but we're just going to do that for now. So we're going to do add dash migration, and we're going to call this, we're just going to call it init. So make sure it's pointed at flp.data, and we are going to hopefully see this build something out for us. And sweet. So under the migrations file, you'll have this model snapshot and this underscore init file here. So this is where you will be building the tables in C#, I guess. So Entity Framework Core will be using this to build out all these tables. So if you just look through here, so protected override up. So on the migration builder, it's going to say, okay, we're going to create a table, ASP.NET roles, ASP.NET users, ASP.NET role claims, all these tables. So this creates the migration file. This doesn't write it. So in this case, there's a down, there's an up, and there's a down. So migrations just keep track of, we're going to be doing multiple migrations as we go. So as we're adding things or as we're changing things, we're going to have new migration files. What that does is it lets you have a history, and especially when you're working in, let's say, industry, and you're most likely working on something that already exists. And let's say they need to change the data type or change a column on a table. You are going to most likely edit the entity and then add a migration for that entity. And then you'll probably run that migration against a dev database and check to see that, okay, yes, my new column's there, it works, but it also doesn't break any functionality or other data in the database. I have seen sometimes where a migration will either fail or it will work and break everything just because your site or your software is expecting certain things from a database, and changing that it's a big deal. So database changes aren't to be taken lightly. So now that we have this generated migration file, we're going to update database. So right now, because we don't have data in here, we are going to build field. Great. And it doesn't like our builder extensions. Let's see why. So I think this is because our package is not currently transitive. So if you notice here, install package, use local version. Let me go over that real quick. So right now, your packages are scoped to projects. So if we go look, I used the local there, but if we look at installed, and we'll go to SQL Server, You'll see how this is top level. Before, I'm pretty sure that it didn't exist here, and I should probably have not have done that, but these are all managed by the projects themselves. So just because you have it installed in one place doesn't mean the other can see it. So, all right. Now let's try and do this again, where we're in our package manager. Let's close all tabs and let's go back to here, update database. And if you haven't been in a console before, you can hit the up arrow and you can get your last command. Awesome. Okay, so that worked, and we are going to refresh up here in our SQL Server Object Explorer. Again, if you have not set this up, you should check out the last video, and it will show you how to kind of set this local SQL Server up for you. Okay, so now we can see all our new ASP.NET user things. So this is our first introduction into identity / authentication and things like that in a web app. So what we're going to do is let's just go take a look around. Let's go look at ASP.NET users. Let's go look at this one. So we didn't see anything to do with this at all. So if you see, these are all columns. So ID, username, normalized username, email confirmed, password hash, security. So I'm just going to go over, this is what you would probably see pretty much anywhere for storing a user login or user account. So you'll have someone enter a username, an email, confirm that email, you'll get that email confirmation thing. So ASP.NET is just setting this up for us, and that is because in our program.cs, not for the client, application DB context. So when we create this, it is going to hit our entity that is identity user, and our identity user. So this application user we created, but it inherits from this identity user. So let's go take a look at identity user. If we look at identity user, you're going to start seeing those fields where we have security stamp, and if we go look at our ASP.NET user, you'll start to see that this is where, access failed, two-factor authentication, two-factor authentication, security stamp, phone number confirmed, two-factor authentication, two-factor enabled. So there's a lot of things underneath the hood that ASP.NET will do. And just know once we start implementing authentication, we'll start to see how we're going to utilize some of these tables. So for now, just know that the way we've implemented it, if you're doing the add migration and update database, you will be good. So we go look at identity DB context here. So we're building our application DB context off of this, which is used for identity. If we go look through this, we have user roles, role claims, role name, ASP.NET Core. So you'll see that we do have this. This is where it's implemented. So again, we do have the application DB context here that we're using. And that application DB context is located in our .data. And that application DB context is inheriting from identity DB context, which is a base class for the entity framework database context used for identity. And because we went and looked at that, and I'm hitting F12. I apologize. F12 will take you to what you're looking at, the source code for that, so you can go and look at certain things. So a lot of this is just investigation, and I wanted to make sure I was saying something correctly, which is, partially correct. Here is where you get to see all of these roles being built out, or all these tables being built out. So ASP.NET role claims, ASP.NET user roles. So just know that this is kind of common things that ASP.NET knows that you're probably going to need to use for identity, and we'll get more into that. So yeah. So another quick tip before we go on, if you right click up here, you can close your tabs and start fresh. I kind of like doing that if I get cluttered before I move on to the next train of thought here. Okay. So we did a migration. We have the beginning of what looks to be some login information, right? Let's get data into that. So, and to do that, we can do seed data, or we can also create our own seed data through the normal functionality of the application, which means we need to make a register and a login page. So a register will create the user, and then the login will get the user and set authentication. So we're gonna focus on, let's get to some fun stuff, which is actually creating a new page. So let's do a register page. So in the client, under components, under pages, we have home.razor. Let's just create a new Razor component. We're going to call this login or register. Apologize, register.razor. So we're going to call this register.razor. And at the top, important to do at page. We're going to do /register. So this is how the router will pick this up and say, okay, yep, this is a page. When you do /register, you'll get here. So we're going to, I always like to set up, this is where you'll get into your HTML, CSS. So just know it's important to know some HTML and CSS going forward now too, because we're going to be using HTML up here, and then we're going to be doing more like C# code down here. You can, so Blazor allows you to do things which are pretty cool, like if, and then you could say if, 1 equals 1. So that's always going to be true, but some kind of Boolean statement, and then you can say, we're going to only produce this p tag if that is true. So and then you can do an else. Say, okay, if that's not true, you can do not that, but another tag down below. But we'll see some of that later on. And again, this is where you can start, messing around and testing some of this stuff for yourself. So I like to just start it in a tag, and we are going to do, let's say, just a header of let's register a new user. So you can find templates for log or register page, but for now I'm just going to go through this where I'm just going to create my own little HTML and mess around with it myself, because that's how I like to do things. So let's do some divs around here, and we're going to have the label, and we are going to create a form. So we're going to actually create a form for we want to provide information for what the user needs. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to start into some Blazor specifics here, which is edit form. And an edit form is awesome because it gives you the ability to say, hey, I want to reference an object in here. So we're going to have I believe it is the context here. But I'll provide the documentation for this though too. But I believe it is the context. We're going to need model. Okay, so we're going to say, okay, what are we basing the form underneath off of? And then we're going to say on valid submit. And we are going to, okay, so model, it doesn't like that because it doesn't have anything. And then on valid submit, it doesn't have anything. So we gotta say, okay, when you hit okay at the bottom of this, so we have a button, we have type, submit, and we're going to say, we're going to call this register. So when you hit the submit button, or like a form, in any kind of non-Blazor specific, you'll have like a form, and then a form will either send like a post request or a GET request whenever submit is hit. So this is Blazor specific. So we're going to say, all right, so whenever you hit register, if it's valid, if the data is valid, we are going to call handle valid register. So we're just gonna call this register. So we're gonna copy this. We're gonna say void. We're gonna handle that. Okay. So when you hit this button, if the data is valid, it's going to run this function. Now we need a model though. So we need a model that looks like, and this is kind of how I design out, any kind of Blazor page for pretty much anything that you're thinking of. When you're running through, you're like, okay, I need this. I need something that looks like this. I like to just do it here, and then eventually bring it out into like the shared or the data. So like, and I'll show you what that looks like going forward. So we're gonna need a register model, register user class. And what that means is we have let's say we have a public string, we have email, and that's it, set, public string password. So we will go over how to manage passwords though. Password. Okay. So this is the model we want to use. We want to say, okay, we want something called register user, where they're providing an email, password, and they're confirming that password. And then we're going to move that along to the server to then create a new application user, ASP.NET user, this. So what we're going to do is, this is an abstraction. This is just saying, hey, you can create an object called register user. So here we're going to say, all right, we have a public register user called, we'll just call it register user. And we're going to say that it's new register user. So it's blank. So we're going to have to do some, I can't remember the word for it. We're going to have to do some analysis on these to make sure that, hey, this is, greater than 3 characters. It includes like, email format of @whatever.com, and then password it has to be this and this, and then we have to communicate that back to the user. So if they're not hitting the validation, data validation on this, then we're going to see some response back to the user to say, okay, You got to enter it correctly. So here we created this model. So we said this is what the register user class will look like, and then this is what the user register user, we're actually creating one, and we're going to say this model is now register user. So that is now happy. So now we're going to say, all right, so now we're going to keep doing the Blazor specific things, which is we have that edit form, and then we're going to do the input text. And the input text is where we do an at bind value equals register user dot email. So we're going to say, okay, anything related to, so the register user dot email is now going to have an input field, and that anything entered into that field is going to be assigned to register user dot email. So this is just saying that you can have a structured form around a specific model, and that you can then create just a really quick template for how to enter that data. So we're going to take this, and I like to copy and paste. So we're going to change this. So this is not email, this is password. And then this is going to be password. And this is going to be confirm password. And we are going to call this confirm password. I'm pretty sure we're going to have some line breaks. So this is me going through the very nitty-gritty details of the HTML here. So it's nice because you get to actually feel for the page and what it's going to look like, and you have full control over what that looks like. You can definitely use libraries and things like that, Bootstrap and other things to help you build some of this stuff out with CSS classes. But for now, we're going to just do the bare bones things right now. So let's actually wrap these in their own divs. Div. These videos are going to be more like working videos, so me kind of working through what I'm thinking and why I'm doing it. So they might not be perfect in terms of, hey, you're just getting right what you're getting. You're just getting right to the point. I would download the code from the GitHub if you want more of that, and then just follow along in the video if you want that kind of type of instruction. But other than that, just do whatever you want to do. So if you think you know how to continue from this, then this is a good starting off point for you. Okay, let's put these in divs. We've bound these here, and we have a button register. So let's now look what the page looks like, and we have a few things we need to get to though. So if we look at this, we look at what we have now. We're going to build it's going to take forever. Sweet, no errors. Okay, so we're at that index page, right? We're just at slash. We have no way to easily navigate through the GUI, through our GUI, I say that, but through the website. We have to type. We have to go up here and say /register. Localhost didn't send any data. Okay, so it doesn't know where I'm trying to go. So let's see why that is. Why don't you like my page register? Did I spell it correctly? We're going to build. We're going to look at a way to do something here. So Docker file is great, but I'm gonna just load into HTTPS real quick, just because it's a lot faster. And I want to do some troubleshooting. Okay, so this works here. I'm not sure why. Maybe there were some layering issues with Docker, but these fields pop up, and you see this is like very bare bones HTML, but it is popping up there. So let's go back to, you can use container. This is going to be very important for now, but if you're testing and you need it to go quickly, HTTPS. If you're doing things that involve, hey, how am I gonna host and making sure it can host, then running it as a container at the end is probably a good idea. So we don't want to type /register to get to our register new user. We want to come up with a more website type a navigation. We want to have some kind of navigation, but we want to be able to navigate from whatever page we're on, because when we're at the register page, we want to be able to go back to the home page as well. So we're going to build out a nav menu. So we're going to go to layout. So under flp.client, let me close these down so you can kind of focus in. So we have our components, right? So one of our components is going to be under layout, and we have the main layout. So if you remember, this is where the body is printed. So these are where your pages are being printed out here at body. They're being referenced here. So what we're going to do, we're going to have another layout type, and we're going to call this nav menu dot Blazor. This is because we are going to be able to throw this around wherever we want to. So we're going to structure this div, and we're going to do another Blazor specific, which is a nav menu. I want to say this is a, what's it called? Navigation link, nav link. Okay, so a nav link, this is going to get you the same kind of features as an href, equals. So we're going to say, all right, so we have a nav link, and we're going to have a match to, let me look at your things here, because I might have to look off of a previously done example because I can't remember the exact. Anyways, wrap this in a div. Actually, let's wrap this in a, that's an HTML tag. So we're going to do match. We're going to say, and we're going to have a do I have an href? I think I just have an href there. Anyways, I'm going to pause right here and make sure I'm doing this correctly. Okay. So after looking it up, we're going to make sure that the nav link, we're going to do some cool CSS stuff. But for now, we're going to just say navlink.match, or not navlinkmatch.all. So we're going to make sure, hey, everything in the URL has to match this to the index. You're just going to match to the index and say anything under here is going to link us back to that index, and we're going to call this, we're just going to do this and say we have our, maybe not even anything. We'll just say, okay. Then we're going to have another one of these. And we're going to do navlinkmatch.all. We're going to do /register. We're going to do register /login. And we'll do some manipulation here just to make sure that, hey, you are either registering or logging in, and you're going to go to this page. So we'll get to that, but for the moment, let's just worry about this register page. All right. So now, before we run this, so we have this nav menu.razor, but how do we reference that? So if we go look at how our main layout was working, referencing an app body, and that body is a render fragment that is being passed here, and that is passing a page. So the page is being passed here, but if you look above, let's add our nav menu. Let's just add our nav menu right here. We'll save that. Build. And this should say, okay, so every time I'm building out a page, I'm going to have this nav menu above the body. And if you look, it doesn't look good, but it's there. So as you can see, it's taking that and it's just saying, okay, when you print that page on the main layout, you're going to print this and then you're going to put this beneath. So there's two components being placed on one document when you see it. When you're getting this page, it's not just this page, it's saying, hey, we're going to render this and the page component beneath it. So we're going to now click on home slash or the register. I hate that. The register, but you see it still stays there. It stays in that same spot. You get hit home, boom. So now we have some navigation going on. And we can enter some data here, boom, and register, and nothing happens because we haven't implemented that functionality yet. But we're getting there. So if we go back to home, this is something we need to work on, is our HTML CSS. So this is where, you know, if you're not super comfortable with doing some of the CSS and HTML, or don't want to and just want to do some more of the back end work, go ahead and take a look at the GitHub, and that should be fixed there. Hopefully for this part. If not, maybe look ahead. But yeah, we are going to, in the next episode, get into talking from the client to the server and getting some of that functionality set up, and maybe populating some of this stuff. We're going to also have some seed data creation, but for now in this episode we went over some more components like the nav menu and creating a register page, and kind of getting introduced to HTML, working alongside some of this C# and how we can use some Blazor specific things to, you know, create forms and other things you would in, let's say, like JavaScript. So we'll leave it there for now, and in the next episode we will hopefully be able to register a new user.